straight from the heart of East Tennessee. This is 10 News at 5.
What happens to your social network profiles when you die? Today we're taking a closer look at how some people are adding social media to their estate plans. Welcome back to 10 News at 5. I'm Beth Haynes. When a loved one passes away, there are typically lots of loose ends to tie up, whether it's selling a home or personal property or closing things like bank accounts. But these days there are other factors to consider, like what happens to that person's social media profiles once they're gone. A new element in estate planning has many people leaving instructions behind for how they want their profiles handled. And today we are taking a closer look at that. Boy, our bases are certainly loaded today. We have Shane Ryan from Ackerman PR, Dan Thompson from Claris Networks, and certified financial planner Laura Lyons from BB&T. Thank you all three for joining us.
No problem.
And we've got a lot to get to. The big umbrella here. We're talking banking accounts. We're talking social media. I want to get quickly all three of your thoughts on this topic and, you know, having it thought of mind and planning ahead.
Well, it's certainly an interesting problem that we've created for ourselves with the social media thing, and I believe some of the things we're going to talk about, which is leaving the sites up as memorials and things like that, I think it's an interesting way, especially for our future generations who are going to do genealogical studies. They've got this wealth of information now that we've left behind for them. It's kind of an interesting aspect.
I hadn't thought about it that way. That's great. Laura?
Well, the average person now has about 25 online accounts with passwords. Some of those are social media accounts, others of those are financial accounts. When a person passes away, one of the most important roles is that person's personal representative or executor, whose job is to take an inventory of what they owned. And so depending on how those assets were titled, they will either pass to someone else or they will be part of that person's estate. For that reason, it's very important for everyone to have an inventory of all of their accounts, where they are, and if they're online, how to access them and what the passwords are. And in fact, we were talking about this before the segment. The government's own blog is now requesting that every one of us name an online executor.
Wow.
Someone to be aware of every internet account that we have and know what our wishes are for those accounts if we become incapacitated or when we pass away.
And we're going to talk with you in just a moment more about security issues and specifically which accounts to watch carefully and make sure you designate to someone else. All right, Shane, your thoughts.
Well, I think that the first thing we need to be looking at is if you're a small business person or you're a sole proprietor, you know, a lot of times these social media accounts are going to be, these are part of the way you do business. So do you have anything set up for who's going to take over that part of your business when you're gone? One thing we all have in common is we're all going to die. You have to have that in part of your plan for even your transition of your business accounts, but also in your personal accounts as well. You can't just let them sit fallow and just assume that, well, I'm dead, no one will use them. That makes them actually better targets for hacking and being used by someone else later.
And having said that, the first one that comes to mind for me, Laura, obviously online banking. What are the accounts you need to be most concerned about, and what are some of those security issues?
Well, I would say rather than specific accounts being of concern, the biggest issue is to make sure that the people in charge of your estate know the accounts that are out there. That way, when you pass away, they become part of your estate unless they were a jointly owned account or a payable on death account. And the key is for the person in charge to know what you have so that they can then monitor those accounts and be aware of suspicious activity. Another issue is that a lot of times an estate administration process can take 9 months to a year. It can be very important, for example, to have a spouse or an adult child who's able to access some funds to continue to pay expenses before the estate has officially been settled.
All right, Dan and Shane, I want to bring you guys back in. A trend that we are seeing, especially on Facebook, when someone passes, their profiles, their pages become memorials. Talk about this trend. Is this a good idea? And a lot of people leave messages, and how does it help the family?
Well, I think there's some therapeutic value to that. Actually, Facebook now has a formal policy that you can actually go in and request that a profile be converted from a living profile to a memorial profile. In the past, it was just kind of catch as catch can. People just kind of did it on their own. Facebook's caught on to the fact that this is a new way of, it's part of the funeral process, really, and it lets people have that. So Facebook at least has built in a policy to let you do that so that people can at least express their thoughts and continue to interact in some way.
Dan, is there a negative alternative to leaving up one's profile after they're gone?
You know, I think what Shane mentioned a minute ago was that just the vulnerability of there's an account hanging out there. Obviously, when we're gone, you wouldn't want some just random person being able to sit there and access your account and make postings. It would get really creepy really quick, right, if you were saying things when you're gone. But, you know, I think for me personally and the generation that I come from, I believe it represents kind of the new way that we mourn and support each other. So I've seen this play out a couple of times in the recent past, and it's always a very nice thing to witness, because you see family members being supported by friends that were maybe out of state or would not have otherwise known that the member passed away.
Well, and they become great tributes, and I do think you're right, Shane. I think they're therapeutic for the family and a way for the family to stay connected with those friends and family of the loved one. We're out of time really quickly.
Well, and in many cases, it can be a way to disseminate information to people about services so that the family doesn't need to be bothered when they're in a time of grief. And I really quickly wanted to mention a not-for-profit website called deathwise.org. A group of entrepreneurs launched this in late 2010. It's a hub of information if you're overwhelmed about planning for your own passing or the imminent or recent death of a loved one. One place to go for everything you need to know.
Deathwise.org. All right. Thank you three for being with us. Always good to see you guys. We're coming right back after this break.